Hey guys, hope everyone's doing really good. It's go do your own research in person. I've got my camera on. I'm going to see how it goes. I find it off-putting, but I thought, I don't know, I just was like, yeah, F it, I'll put my camera on tonight. So in this live stream, I am going to talk about BRYAN FREEDMAN and his relationship to Michael Jackson. So I've got my people web that I made a little while ago now. Good evening, Adam McIntyre. I know he's not actually going to be featured much tonight, but I had made this people web. I think it was like, I can't even remember when it was. Maybe a couple of months ago. It's on my community posts. I made it with Katie from Online BS Pod. It was when we were doing our Alexa Nicholas stuff. And it was just making sense of how all of these people people that I featured in my videos, yeah? And it's just crazy how they're all connected. So, yeah, Adam McIntyre's kind of down the bottom. He's not really, I don't think he's really done any content about Michael Jackson that I know of. But these people at the top is who we're going to be focusing on tonight. So obviously we've got Michael Jackson over here. I've added someone new as well. This guy I'm going to do a little feature on tonight. His name is Michael Sitrick. He is a crisis PR like Matthew Hiltzig and Melissa Nathan. So I think a lot of people that come into my comments about Michael Jackson, I don't know if they understand about these crisis PR people and how much they brainwash and gaslight the public into believing these people are innocent. When I say these people, I'm talking about these celebrities like Michael Jackson, P. Diddy, Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, and formerly Prince Andrew. Yeah. So we've got Jeffrey at the top here. Oh, and Donald Trump. Yeah. It's widely believed that Jeffrey, Andrew, and Weinstein are guilty of being pedos in the case of these two, and sex offenders. And Diddy's in jail right now, not for all the crimes that he was charged with, because he had a very good legal team. So these are all the lawyers that they use. And this woman here, Alex Shapiro, she's right now trying to get Diddy's sentence reduced as we speak. She's in court right now. But yeah, that was what I wanted to, the point I wanted to make is Andrew hasn't had a trial. He's not even been arrested. He was arrested the other day, but not for the sex offences. He paid out millions of pounds to Virginia Giuffre. Harvey Weinstein paid out millions of dollars. He did have a trial, but Jeffrey Epstein, on his first arrest, never had a trial. His victims never got to present their evidence. He was given a sweetheart deal, a plea deal, and had an 18-month sentence for a charge relating to a minor, a pedo. People believe that these two are guilty, and most people believe he's guilty as well. But Michael Jackson, they're like, oh, he was found innocent. And then another thing they say as well is the FBI did a 10-year investigation and they never found anything. The FBI have 10 years worth of files on Jeffrey Epstein and no one's been charged. So I'm just saying, when you start looking at the bigger picture, it starts to make a lot more sense of why you, if you believe that he's innocent, might believe you've been fooled into believing he's innocent. So yeah, what was I going to say? Let me check the comments quickly because I know you said something. Don't be worried about how you look on camera. You look well put together. Oh, bless you. I'm trying to get over it. But I find it a lot easier with the camera off. I'm not going to lie. I don't know. I'm just trying new things. And you know what I want to say, actually, we've hit 1,500. I have 1,500 subscribers on my channel. So we're on the road to 2K. So I'm like, some people must be enjoying this content, or maybe they're just hate following. I don't know. But yeah, we're doing something right. Thank you to anyone who has subscribed as well. Okay, let me get back to my presentation. Right, so as I said, we've got Jeffrey, Andrew, and Harvey Weinstein. Yeah, people believe that they're guilty. Most people believe they're guilty. We've got the crisis PRs over here. Matthew Sitrick, Matthew Hiltzig, Melissa Nathan. We've got Stephanie Jones over there. The reason why Scooter Braun is there is because he owns, or his business, his former business, Hybe, a business called Hybe, that he was the CEO of. He used that business to purchase her company, which is called Tag PR. Yeah. So these people all do crisis PR. Hiltzig and Sitrick, sorry, it's Michael Sitrick, Matthew Hiltzig. Yeah, they have done PR for Donald Trump. They do crisis PR. That's people in crisis. It's not just regular PR. It's getting people out of the worst crimes they've been accused of. We know Donald Trump's been accused of the same crimes. I'm not going to get too much into saying what I think about him because it's a waste of energy. But yeah, these two have both worked for Trump. They've both worked for Epstein. This is documented. It's not even secret. Matthew Hiltzig has tried to keep it secret, but he is all over the Epstein files. They also both worked for Harvey Weinstein. I'm not sure if Sitrick worked for formerly Prince Andrew, but it would not surprise me one bit. What I did find out was that Michael Sitrick worked, or still works, for the Michael Jackson estate. Yeah. Also, someone who worked for him, her name is Holly Baird. She worked for him when they were representing Weinstein. They had to sue Weinstein because he didn't pay his bill. She did the crisis PR. She works for Garagos, Mark Garagos. This is a lawyer, Mark Garagos, doing crisis PR. They were working for Diddy during his trial. Yeah, so you just see how these people are connected. It is crazy. So BRYAN FREEDMAN also works for the Michael Jackson estate. And the reason why we're talking about him tonight is because it turns out it was him that got the Casio family to accept money so they wouldn't say anything about the abuse their whole family was receiving. No, wait, how do you describe it? Okay, basically, he wanted to keep them quiet about saying what happened to them by Michael Jackson. Yeah. BRYAN FREEDMAN currently is representing Justin Baldoni. Justin Baldoni is also hired Melissa Nathan to do crisis PR for him. That's how I know so much about these people, because all of her text messages between him and BRYAN FREEDMAN were leaked. Well, not all of them, but a big, massive amount of them. You know who else they work for? Johnny Depp. Michael Sitrick worked for Johnny Depp. I've got an article I'm going to read in a minute. This guy, Jed Wallace, is who they use to manipulate the data online so that certain comments and articles are suppressed and favorable articles about them go to the top of the SEO. So that's where these people come in. You've got Candace Owens, Perez Hilton, Andy Signal. And then, like you said earlier, we've got Adam McIntyre, Alexa Nicholas. Yeah. If you watched my read through of the data analysis, the report, it stated this guy, this professor of data science, he said people don't receive their news from news sources anymore. These are the influencers. They receive their news, their information from that's their sources. These people, Candace, Perez, and Andy Signal, are in regular contact with these lawyers, Garagos, BRYAN FREEDMAN, Sitrick, and Hiltzik. So you see how it all makes sense? Any questions? Right. I do hope that some of the Michael Jackson people do watch this, because there was one, I think she's a woman in particular, who was in my comments. And she said, I do my own research. And I said, okay, well, if you do your research then, because she's like, why should I believe the Casio family? Like I said, the Casio family, just like his previous victims, James Safechuck and oh my God, his name's gone out. Wade Robson. Yeah, just like them, they spoke out in defense of Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson groomed them from 7, 8 years old into believing they had this special relationship that they could never tell anyone about what he was doing to them, because it was all about love. And also, if anyone found out, they would be in trouble. They would go to prison and it would betray him. The Casio mother, she said, he begged me, you know, please make sure no one hears about this, because, sorry, I don't think he said that. He made her feel like, because these people were accusing him, he was going to end, his career was going to end. So she felt bad for him. She felt like she was helping him by going out saying, no, he's innocent. He would never do anything like that. Not knowing, she says, that he was doing that to her own kids. Yeah, she thought she could trust him the same way that Wade and James Safechuck thought that Michael Jackson could be trusted for them to stay in his room. Although, I mean, you know, we don't know how much it's difficult to understand how manipulative he was, but that is what pedophiles do. They are manipulative and they lie. And he apparently did a lot of emotional blackmailing by crying. And also he had substance abuse problems. And people were like in awe, because they're like, it's Michael Jackson. You know, they couldn't believe that he was this lonely guy that needed so much support and help, but they felt sorry for him. It's kind of crazy, but this is what people that come into the comments, and I genuinely think some of them do believe he's innocent, but this is why I don't. He's just a classic groomer. He's a classic pedophile. And when you see the network of people around him that were helping for years to convince us through TV interviews, through books, through articles, that he wasn't a pedophile. It has worked on a lot of people. But you can see how much influence they have had and how much effort they have put into convincing people that that he is not guilty, if you know what I mean. Once you start to understand how it works, you might think differently. So let me show you this article about Michael Sitrick, because that was when it really started to make sense for me. Pull out the red yard and the corkboard. Sorry, I just had to. That's the other reason why I don't put my camera on, because I have to keep putting my glasses on and taking them off. Right. You think the corkboard... sorry. You think this page offers a refreshing counter-narrative? It's hard to find Michael Jackson or Blake Lively content you can take seriously. Yeah, I mean, I wonder why that is, yeah? After reading the report the other night, I think it's a miracle I get any views. But I've thought that for a long time, because it's not even that. It's not even just that. Even channels that don't do this kind of content, yeah, that signed up to agencies that have venture capital investment, they do tricks to move the algorithm. So anyone that's like a genuine, independent, regular person just talking about something that no one else is, it's really hard to get any impressions on this platform. So I'm grateful to you guys for being here as well, and I know you appreciate it. I know, because not everyone just wants to watch brain rot. But yeah, the red yarn and the corkboard, it's hard to explain to people without sounding conspiratorial. I agree, and that's why I like to present my evidence so you know what I'm talking about. Because when I read this about this Michael Sitrick, I was like, no way. That's the same guy that worked for Weinstein. And then, because I'd already researched Holly Baird at the Diddy trial, I knew that she worked for Michael Sitrick. So I was like, this is crazy. That's him. This is 11 years ago. That's what he looked like. He has a beard now. And by the way, he's another one that loves going on TV to talk. Well, not TV. Yeah, I guess he goes on TV, but he must be pretty old. But he's on YouTube. I saw a YouTube video where he's doing an interview today from recent. So I don't know how old he is, but I'm guessing he's got to be in his 70s. So it says here, Sitrick and Company, one of the clients represented by Sitrick and Company is the estate of Michael Jackson. So bear in mind, this is 2015, this article, July 21st, 2015, yeah? That's what he used to look like. Years after Jackson's death, and almost 7 years after the release of the film based on Jackson's rehearsals for his planned concert tour, the estate apparently is still very active. I mean, that was in 2015. We're in 2026 and they're still going. They're still going with the gaslighting. Bear in mind as well, before Michael Jackson died, he had massive debts. I've really done so much research, right? Because when I saw that picture of him with Epstein, a story come out that he was flat not flat hunting, house hunting in Miami. And that was why he was at Jeffrey Epstein's. It's bullshit. I don't even think that picture of him is in his Palm Beach house, only because of the flooring. I just don't see that flooring in any of the rooms in the Palm Beach house. I know for sure that Michael Jackson met up with Epstein on at least 3 occasions, separate occasions. He was also, there's way more connections that I've come across since I did my live streams at Christmas. Yeah, Michael Jackson was really close to that Deepak, what's his name? You know, the Indian guru guy, yeah, that was like besties with Epstein as well. Choprak Deepa, is it Choprak Deepa? Yeah. I have a feeling it was him that messaged Epstein on the day Michael Jackson died and was like, I know you were good friends, because they've redacted the name, but I just think that would make sense. So yeah, when I saw people coming out and making these videos saying that it was all bullshit, that Michael Jackson knew Epstein, I had to look into it, and they are lying. And they are fraudsters. One of them that says he was his bodyguard, I could do a whole episode on him, yeah. His name is, what's his name again? I forgot his name. But anyway, he worked for him for like 1 day or something. 1 or 2 days in the UK. Matt Fidesz, that's it. He's a British guy. Worked with Michael Jackson for nothing for 2 days, and he's built his entire career off saying he's Michael Jackson's bodyguard, and he has like a whole self-defense school franchise. He's literally a fraudster. You can look it up on like forums. There's people saying that he's ripped them off with his self-defense school. He doesn't really have any qualifications. These are the kind of people that defend Michael Jackson publicly and go on podcasts and say they have inside information. They're lying. But yeah, apart from the fact that I know that he at least was at his house maybe 3 times, another connection that I came across is the Saudi guys. I can't say the name, but you know who I mean. Bin Sulayem, is it? Those 2 brothers that are the Saudi royal family. That's who Michael Jackson was staying with. So, and then if you add on Chris Tucker, Brett Ratner, all these people that were like best friends with Michael Jackson and Epstein, it's just uncanny how many contacts they had in it, like their mutuals. But anyway, I'm getting away from this article. So where was I? Okay, talking about the estate. So yeah, there's this. Yeah, so what I was going to say is when he died, he had these huge debts. He had all these like financiers buzzing around trying to see whether they could use Michael Jackson's property as collateral to try and make money back. It didn't work for any of them. That's why there was so many disputes going on when he died about who was in charge of his estate. But eventually it was one of his longtime lawyers, John Branca, and I think, was Garagos involved? I'm not too sure exactly. But anyway, BRYAN FREEDMAN has been actively involved in his estate for a long time. And they managed to bring it back to make it financially profitable again by making a lot of money out of publicizing him for his music and all the other stuff, and trying to keep the pedophile crimes quiet. That's why they've paid off all these people. The trial that's happening between Wade and James Safechuck was meant to be this year, but they've tried to put it off until after this biopic movie comes out. If you think about it, there's been like the Michael Jackson stage show, there's been retroactive concerts, I think. There's been a lot of ways they've sold like his old music again. There's been a lot of ways that the estate has made that money back out of him. And so now his daughter as well is contesting the estate, saying, you've set up all these LLCs to take money for yourselves. And she wants them to be more transparent about how they're using and spending and taking money from it. But anyway, I don't want to get onto that. I'll get onto that in a minute if I have time, because I have a video of her. So there's a lot of news or information kind of dripping out about what's really going on with his estate, and it's not good. So it says active enough that it gave significant amount of fees, significant amount fees to Sitrick and Company. Something interesting about the firm's representation is that during Jackson's life, did I read that correctly? Active enough that it pays significant annual fees to Sitrick and Company. Yeah, so he's basically on a retainer. This was in 2015. Something interesting, though, about this firm's representation is that during Jackson's life, Sitrick is quoted as saying there are only 2 clients he would not represent, and one of them was Michael Jackson. Guess money talks. In 1998, Sitrick released Spin: How to Turn the Power of the Press to Your Advantage. Spin has become a go-to reference resource. One second. I don't want to mess this up anymore. I'm struggling. A go-to reference resource for crisis management since its release. That's 1998. He wrote the blueprint for crisis management. He also has a new book due to be released next year called Spin Faster. And if anyone knows enough about crisis management to write the books on it, it is Sitrick. And funnily enough, Mark Garagos wrote the book. What was it called? It's basically whatever the word is for like getting your case dismissed. But I just thought it was interesting that during the Diddy trial, they kept saying the case was going to get thrown out. And I'm like, yeah, Mark Garagos literally wrote a book called that. On the company's website, you can find a list of titles given to him in various top magazines. Fortune magazine calls him one of the most accomplished practitioners of the dark arts of public relations. Yeah, so the dark arts of public relations, they use private investigators. They harass and intimidate witnesses. They put out smear campaigns against witnesses so that people think they're lying and the perpetrators are innocent. They manipulate SEO. They delete articles. They suppress articles and put out positive statements and videos and documentaries and I guess articles in their place. So that's what comes up if anyone searches it. And that's why people don't see all the stuff about Michael Jackson and how many court cases he was involved in, because there's so many. He was sued by so many people for not paying bills, mainly. Even the pharmacy, before he died, he owed them $100K. Forbes magazine refers to him as the flak for when you're under attack. Sitrick and company started in Los Angeles, and over the years they have added 4 more locations. As mentioned, they have represented over 1,000 clients in their 25 plus years of operation. The estate of Michael Jackson is one, but some other well-known clients include Barney's of New York. I don't know what they did. The Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Los Angeles, the Catholic Church, aka Kobe Bryant, Johnny Depp, Exxon. So funnily enough about Exxon is that Mark Garagos is connected to Exxon, as is Joe Dunn, who was on my web chart. Joe Dunn is the disgraced debarred lawyer and senator that was behind Alexa Nicholas's Eat Predators organization. I think what's his name? The guy from Tom Girardi, sorry, Tom Girardi from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. I'm pretty sure he's connected to it as well. He was the one that was bribing Joe Dunn, because Tom Girardi was a litigation lawyer who for years ran a pyramid scheme. He was using his law firm as a pyramid scheme, ripping off his clients, you know. Chris Hemsworth, I'm like, I don't know what he did. Rush Limbaugh, Pepsi Co. Well, Pepsi, I mean, Pepsi sponsored Michael Jackson. They sponsored Bill Cosby. They've just said they're not doing the what's it called, the wireless festival here because of Kanye West, which I think is really interesting, because they haven't had a problem sponsoring any of these other ex-offenders. Universal Studios, Starbucks, and the World Soccer League. Over the years, some of these names have been in the middle of these perfect PR storms. So it's a good thing they know who to call. That's the end of the article. It's quite a quick one. So yeah, now we're going to get on to this lawsuit, which is between the Casio family and the Michael Jackson estate. Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't finish. Did I say that? Yeah, the Wade Robson and James Safechuck trial was meant to be happening this year as well, but they've managed to postpone it until after this biopic gets released. I think I did say that. So the first video I made about Michael Jackson, I went over like how it's taken so long and how they painstakingly managed to refile according to what the judge was advising them to make the LLC, because that is how these people get away with their crimes, is by forming LLCs, so they're not liable for damages. And finally, the judge has ruled that the LLC is going to be held accountable for Michael Jackson's crimes against children, because of the people, the employees that he had, that basically were just like with Epstein, these people don't operate alone. They use people around them, their staff, their girlfriends, friends, people that they bring into their circle, people that they financially reward. They become co-conspirators in this. It's a sick operation that they do. It's super well planned. That's why they get away with it, you know, because people like kind of want everything so neatly defined, and it's like that's how it works. They have such tight connections to the people working for them. The people working for them are not going to speak out against them and say, well, I witnessed a crime. When they have done that, they've received retaliation. It's deep. So yeah, this is, I'll just start at the top. United States District Court, Central District of California. Edward Joseph Cascio, individual. Dominic Savini Cascio, I think that's the dad. Marie Nicole Forte, an individual. And Aldo Cascio, an individual. Yeah, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of the Cassios. Then there's Frank Cascio. Oh, this is another connection as well that I don't see people talking about. Okay, so Frank Cascio, or he called himself Frank Tyson. He went to school with this guy called, oh my God, why is everyone's names going out of my head tonight? It will come back to me. The person who uploaded images of an advert from a nudist magazine onto the Epstein files FBI tip line. He is married to a woman who has said she was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein. When Virginia Roberts was still alive, Virginia Giuffre Roberts, was it Virginia Roberts Giuffre? I didn't know this at the time because I didn't really used to follow this, but on Twitter, Virginia called her out and said that was not a victim. She knew Epstein, and she was one of the women that would try and find girls for him and receive money. So they were going back and forth on Twitter. That girl, that she's Asian, she's now deleted all of her tweets. Not Virginia. Virginia's Twitter is still there, I think. So this guy, Armen, that's his name, Vincent Armen. I knew it would come to me. I'm sorry, I have so many names to remember. Vincent Armen was school friends with Frank Cascio, yeah, and then they all ended up working for Michael Jackson. Do you think it's not a coincidence that he is married to someone that was in Jeffrey Epstein's circle? Because I'm like, I can't be the only one that notices these things. But anyway, the reason why I think Vincent Armen posted that stuff on the FBI, on the Epstein FBI tip line, is because I think that he feels like this is going to exonerate him from basically concealing evidence in this case. They were given, or they said they found, porno mags owned by Michael Jackson. It was a mag, like I said, it was a magazine where they had put a ring around certain publications that he wanted to order. And they were accused at the time of intimidating the witnesses in Michael Jackson's 2005 trial. However, they weren't found guilty of it. But let's say if something changed, yeah, I think that Vincent Armen guy is trying to make himself look innocent. If you watch the latest Channel 4 documentary called The Trial. I tried to use like pieces of it in my video, but unfortunately it's all copyright claims, so it's really difficult to use it. And also it's not on YouTube anyway. Like, you have to basically screenshot it from the Channel 4 app if you want to use it. But the way that he came across on that documentary to me was very victim like he was going, it's been so hard for me to get over this, that, you know, I believed Michael Jackson was innocent. And I'm like, you didn't believe Michael Jackson was innocent. You knew you was covering up for him. Like, he's made himself look like the victim, which to me is not a very good sign of an innocent person. But anyway, Frank, yeah, he went on TV shows. He went on Wendy Williams. He wrote a book saying Michael Jackson was my best friend. There's no way he would have done that. He's not involved in this lawsuit, but I believe that he has now said similar things, that he was abused by Michael Jackson. He's just going about it in a different way. So plaintiffs Edward, Dominic, Marie, and Aldo hereby allege as follows. Michael Jackson was a serial predator who, over the course of more than a decade, drugged, raped, and sexually assaulted each of the plaintiffs, beginning when some of them were as young as 7 or 8. Jackson's... Oh, okay, so this must be all the kids, sorry. I don't know where I got that was the parents from. I just thought the dad was called Dominic, so maybe the son's called Dominic as well. So it's Edward, Dominic, Marie Nicole, and Aldo. I haven't read this all the way through yet. I've just read bits of it. Michael Jackson was a serial child predator who, over the course of more than a decade, drugged, raped, and sexually assaulted each of the plaintiffs, beginning when some of them were as young as 7 or 8. So it's the same story that has been told. Jackson's attack on these siblings went on for extended periods, including in locations around the world, and when Jackson and his children were guests in plaintiff's family home. Jackson groomed and brainwashed each plaintiff without the knowledge of the others or their parents throughout their childhood years. Jackson used methods typical of child predators. This is the thing that I just don't see how his defenders, like, even if I'm not even talking about people that write comments, I'm talking about content creators, people who watch Candace Owens. Like, this is classic group. His behavior was just classic grooming. They're playing with you if they don't see that, and they say that they do investigative journalism. Jackson used methods typical of child predators, but his wealth and fame and the apparatus of professional advisors and employees who aided and abetted and actively concealed the abuse gave him far more power over his many victims than other child predators. If he was a guy that lived in a creepy house in your street, people would see him completely differently, because he's Michael Jackson and it's rammed down people's throats how many albums he sold and how he was the greatest pop star, the king of pop. It's like, and then also the murder trial, people start seeing him as victimized. Jackson insinuated himself into the lives of plaintiffs and their parents with obsessive attention, lavish gifts, access to his celebrity lifestyle, and declarations that he loved and needed each of them. After the abuse started, he isolated them emotionally and sometimes physically from responsible adults and from each other. So in the video I made, and this is before I had even read this, I found an expert who talked about classic groomers, classic how pedophiles operate with their grooming when they're in trusted positions, like in church or scout leaders or teachers. Michael Jackson was in a trusted position. He positioned himself. He created a public persona of someone that loved kids, that did so much for kids. He was always going to hospital wards and orphanages, just like Jimmy Savile. So people believed it. He was making himself look like a trusted figure. It's just people don't see it because they're like, he would never do that. He would totally do that. He had photos of babies on the walls in his hotel room. Like, who does that? He plied them with drugs and alcohol. See, this was the other thing. So did Diddy. I'm not sure about Epstein, but what I think is just so crazy about the legal system is celebrities. Yeah, like Michael Jackson, when he died, they put Arnold. I forgot the doctor's name. The guy who basically they said that he killed him because he supplied the propofol. Yesterday, I heard that the woman who supplied the ketamine to Matthew Perry got a 15-year sentence for supplying the ketamine. Diddy, at the trial, we were told how he coerced his girlfriends who had never taken drugs before into taking drugs and making them do pills. And yesterday, even the judge said one of them's an addict now. And I'm like, I'm sure it's more than one, you know? But he doesn't get charged with something like that. He gets a 40-month sentence. It's wild. The legal system is wild. Anyway, these were kids he was doing this to. And that is another way of buying someone's loyalty, of making sure that someone's never going to tell on you. If they're addicted to pills or drugs or alcohol, they're going to need that supply. That's going to be their driving motivation in life. You know, they'll do anything for that. So they're not going to say anything or do anything that's going to stop them getting that supply. It's that simple. He showed them pornography. Yeah. There's so much evidence of the pornography that was found in his house. Tapes. He used a porn photographer to make videos and take photos. Oh my gosh, what's his name? Sorry. I'm really bad with names. One sec. But there's pictures of him in Miami, in Palm Beach, with Brett Ratner. And it wouldn't surprise me if Epstein didn't know that guy. One second, what's his name? I should have prepared this, but anyway, he sued him because Michael Jackson didn't pay him. But yeah, why would you hire a porn photographer to take pictures and make videos of you if you're an innocent guy? I forgot his name. Okay. Anyway, it might come to me. Sorry. He's a big, chubby guy, bald. We've got a new person in the chat. And when it became public, when the public found out that they hired this guy, Michael Jackson sacked him and was like, "Oh, I didn't know he did that." Of course, he knew he did that. He was literally out partying with him. It's just amazing what has been covered up to the public. Julia Cheatham, you're late to the party again. Oh, you haven't missed much. Yeah, Deepak Chopra. Thank you. They got there in the end. Yeah, you haven't missed much, Julia. Anyway. Let me carry on. So we've just started reading through the lawsuit of the Casio children against Michael Jackson. And like I said at the beginning, we're going to get there, but BRYAN FREEDMAN was responsible for paying these people off so they didn't speak out. Right. He showed them pornography, including pictures of unclothed children, to normalize the abuse and desensitize them. He made them fear and distrust others by convincing them that not only his life, but also their lives and the lives of their family members would be destroyed if anyone found out what he was doing to them. Can you remember what people told you when you were 7 or 8 years old? I think one of them said it started when he was like 4, you know, because he was literally in their lives from birth, some of them. So you don't know any different when an adult is telling you that at that age. You just take it on board, you know, as normal. You don't know what's normal when you're a kid. You just accept what adults tell you. Defendants and their employees provided the drugs, alcohol, and pornography. Right? Vincent Amen. Facilitated Jackson's being left alone during the essays and covered the abuse up afterwards. 15 years after Jackson's death and after the well-publicized release of the HBO documentary Leaving Neverland, detailing Jackson's abuse of other children, that apparatus continues to use its enormous wealth and power to try to silence plaintiffs and prevent them from seeking justice. That was another point someone said in the comments. They were like, why would they accept money if they really wanted to get justice? You're going to find out. That's what I said to her. I said, I'm going to do a live about this tomorrow. If you want to do research, if you say you do research, because she was like, I've done my research. I'm like, this has to come into your research. Like, I'm telling you, BRYAN FREEDMAN has a history of doing this to people. This is what he does. He gets them to settle for lower than they should get, so they can never speak about it. But he does it in a very coercive and manipulating way by saying that he's on their side. So they thought they were going to get justice. How do they know? They believed him. He's a lawyer. He's like, yeah, I've sued this person. I've sued that person. I get justice for people. They believed it. BRYAN FREEDMAN gets articles written about him all the time. After the documentary's release, defendants fraudulently induced the plaintiffs to sign a deceptive and unconscionable document that the Jackson estate created to attempt to prohibit plaintiffs from talking about the years of abuse they endured. More recently, defendants responded to detailed admissible evidence of Jackson's crimes against plaintiffs with defamatory false accusations, threats, and public disclosure of highly private information. Defendants have explicitly threatened to drive plaintiffs into bankruptcy if they make their claims publicly. This is just a pattern. Plaintiffs reject the Jackson's estate's morally bankrupt efforts to control and silence them. Plaintiffs bring this action to hold the Michael Jackson estate, its affiliates, and the persons who control or work on their behalf accountable for Jackson's conduct and their own wrongdoing. Let me have a sip of water. So I have a feeling that when it says they induce the plaintiffs to sign a deceptive and unconscionable document, and then more recently, defendants responded to detailed admissible evidence of Jackson's crimes against plaintiff with defamatory false accusations, threats, and public disclosure. I have a feeling there was something that came out in the Mail, which we know is one of their outlets that they use to do their cover-up jobs. When I say they, I'm talking about the crisis PRs, Melissa Nathans, Matthew Hiltzig's, Michael Sitrick's. They have people at the Daily Mail and TMZ. I didn't even mention TMZ, Harvey Levin. Harvey Levin built his career on talking about Michael Jackson going back to 2005. He's besties with Mark Garagos. Yeah, so there was some article that came out about this way before they filed this document, which was in February. I should have said actually at the beginning. It was filed 27th of February 2026. That's this year. But I think it was around that. It was a few months before that. They put something in the press to intimidate them, to make them think, yeah, we better not go there. But they're still doing it anyway. The parties, so as I said, Edward Joseph Cascio, Dominic Savini Cascio, Marie Nicole Porte, Aldo Cascio. Defendant John Branca is and at all times material herein and has been co-administrator of the estate of Michael Jackson and co-trustee of the Michael Jackson Family Trust. Hereinafter referred to the Jackson estate or the estate. Okay, so John Branca has been trying to lobby for it to become impossible to have legal action against someone after they die for this kind of crime. Look at Epstein as well. Yeah, going back to my chart. Let me just show it again for one second. My people web. Epstein, yeah, Epstein's estate. They have paid out millions to victims. There hasn't even been a trial. They the estate executor is one of his lawyers. And his accountant. So it's Richard Kahn and Darren Indike. He just did a deposition because, again, they're trying to say that they're innocent. They're like, I never saw him abuse anyone. If I had ever seen that, I would have not worked with him ever again. Trying to make themselves, they're trying to rewrite history, but they've paid out millions to victims without there being a trial. Very different story over there, I have to say, because I just think maybe it's because there's way too much evidence to show that he did it. But yeah, I guess it was in their interest to do that. Financially is what I'm saying. But okay, so then we've got all these LLCs that they created. We've got John McClane as a defendant. He's a co-administrator of the estate and co-trustee of the trust. We've got the Michael Jackson Company LLC, my MJJ Productions LLC, MJJ Ventures LLC, Herman Weisberg. Okay, his name has come up for me before. He is a individual residing in the state of New York. Oh yeah, he's the private detective. Plaintiffs sue does 1 through 20, inclusive, herein under fictitious names. Plaintiffs do not know their true names and capacities. Wow. When plaintiffs ascertain the doe's defendants' true names and capacities, plaintiffs will amend this complaint by inserting their true names and capacities herein. So they've got 20 anonymous people that have been part of this cover-up. Each reference in this complaint to defendants or to any of them also refers to all defendants sued under fictitious names. On information and belief, at all times, material herein, each of the defendants. Oh, sorry. I just realized I haven't gone back to the yeah, so that was what I just read. Yeah. On information and belief, at all times material herein, each of the defendants was the agent and employee of the other defendants, and in doing the things hereinafter alleged was acting within the course and scope of such agency and employment. The court has subject matter jurisdiction over the federal question claim alleged herein. It's handy that they are in... Oh, they're in New York, aren't they? But the companies, I think, are... Anyway, let me not worry about that. This whole jurisdiction thing is where these cases fall apart, but I think they've got it covered. Should this court decide that that venue is not proper and venue is proper under because defendants are subject to this court's personal jurisdiction in this judicial district. So I know that the Wade Robson and James Safechuck case is 100% in LA. And like I said, that is literally about to go to trial. General allegations, summary. Plaintiffs met Jackson through their father. That's why I thought they were talking about him, because his name's Dominic, who met Jackson while working at a luxury hotel where Jackson frequently stayed. After gaining plaintiffs and their families' trust, Jackson sexually abused each of the plaintiffs for years, starting when some of them were as young as 7 or 8 years old and continuing into their adolescence. The abuse included the following. Jackson R-worded and molested Edward on interstate and international trips, including, among others, during stops on the Dangerous World Tour. At Elizabeth Taylor's house in Switzerland, there's pictures of them on that tour, I think. There's definitely pictures of them in lots of different countries when they're kids. At Elizabeth Taylor's house in Switzerland. Elizabeth Taylor definitely had some kind of substance issues going on. At Elton John's home in the United Kingdom. I can well believe it. And at Jackson's Santa Barbara County, California estate, Neverland Ranch. Jackson R-worded and molested Dominic on interstate and international trips, including in Florida, New Jersey, New York, France, and South Africa, and during the History World Tour, at Neverland Ranch, and at the Casio family's New Jersey home. He did it in their own home. Jackson raped and molested Aldo on interstate and international trips, including at Neverland Ranch in New York, at the Casio family's home, on video shoot locations, and at recording sessions. Jackson SA'd Marie Nicole on interstate and international trips. So this is the daughter. There have been, well, there is a record of him paying a girl back in the 80s, I think, late 80s or 90s, including at Neverland Ranch, New York, Las Vegas, Florida, and the Casio family's home. So all of these kids, he was doing this in their own house. He unsuccessfully attempted to SA marry Nicole in Bahrain. Wow. Yeah, so Bahrain. That's what I was saying. There's another Jeffrey Epstein connection. It's just too much of a coincidence. Jackson's grooming and manipulation of plaintiffs. Jackson's years of brainwashing prevented plaintiffs from seeking help when he was alive and for years afterward, or even comprehending the despicable behavior they endured. If you listen to any of Wade Robson or James Safe testimony, they say exact same thing. Speaking of Bahrain, actually, I did hear one story that was the reason why he married Lisa Marie was because they didn't want, they thought it would be better for his image or something like that. Or maybe that was Debbie Rowe. Maybe I'm getting confused. Because that was more in the 2000s, wasn't it? But yeah, there was some deal he did with some Saudi guy, and they were like, bro, you need to be married. This is, I don't know. I mean, this is just stuff I've read. I don't 100% know if that's true, but it sounds plausible. Because he obviously wanted to have kids with her. Okay. After Leaving Neverland was released, the Jackson estate and its lawyers and investigator used fraudulent misrepresentations, undue influence, and false promises to prevent plaintiffs from revealing their abuse and seeking justice until now. Jackson insinuated himself into plaintiffs' family life. He spent holidays and special occasions, including Thanksgiving, Christmas, and his own birthday with plaintiffs and their family, often during lengthy stays at their New Jersey home with his own children. Jackson gained plaintiffs' sympathy by complaining about his own childhood and telling them repeatedly that he lacked a bond with his own family and that they were his true family. I think his own family had literally disowned him by this point. Jackson secured plaintiffs' loyalty and acceptance of the abuse with rewards, including unique access to his celebrity lifestyle and increasingly extravagant presents. These included suitcases full of video games and electronics, private shopping trips to toy stores, exclusive visits to theme parks, introductions to other celebrities, and interstate and international travel. The travel included extended concert tours, during which Jackson's organization assured Jackson the privacy he needed for his SA. Those bodyguards that were working for free so that they could make careers out of saying they worked for Michael Jackson. Oh, we got a comment. You heard that a Qatari billionaire was obsessed with MJ, so he married Janet. Oh, yes, I remember that. And wait, I can't read it there. He married Janet and increased her marriage settlement for 5 years. And a boy. I don't know if there's any Bahrain connection, but Gulf neighbors. Well, yeah, because again, going back to Epstein, he was really good friends with a billionaire from Bahrain. And then look at Clinton, those pictures of Clinton. Yeah, he was asked about it in his deposition, where he's in the pool, where he's in the jacuzzi in the pool with Ghislaine Maxwell. That was in I think it was the Prince of Bahrain, his hotel. And they were like his guests. And he's like, yeah, we were his guests. And he was like, we had this whole floor of the hotel and it had a pool in it, so I got in the pool, like trying to like totally distance himself from there being anything weird about it. I could do another whole thing about Clinton's deposition, but like the facts are, that financially Epstein and Maxwell were really involved in fundraising for Clinton's organizations. It didn't really come out in that deposition, but those are facts. So yeah, there's definitely connections there. I'm not saying that's how Michael Jackson got hooked up with them, but I just think he had a small circle. And it's just funny how, like I said, Kevin Tucker was on that same trip. And Brett Ratner was very close to Epstein. He's in the files. He was in his New York apartment with victims doing with Jean-Luc Brunel. All right, let me go back to the lawsuit. Jackson normalized his abuse to condition plaintiffs to it. He told them that porn and pictures of unclothed children were sweet and normal. That's that clip of Frank Cascio going on TV. It's really hard to come across now. In fact, I found it on Vincent Armand's website, but he's got, because I think it's been deleted, but he's on TV. This is during the trial, the 2005 trial. And the presenter's really pushing him. She has all the books laid out on the table. And she's like, how can you say this isn't what we're saying it is? And Frank's so passionately defending it. He's like, this is what artists use as reference, which I mean, it's not true, but that was obviously what he was told for so long. He bathed with some of the plaintiffs. He made 2 young boys under his care watch him abuse Marie Nicole and told her that the abuse he inflicted on her was a normal thing between a man and a woman. Jackson himself, constantly under the influence of drugs and frequently intoxicated, plied plaintiffs with alcohol, marijuana, illegal hard drugs, and with prescription drugs, including Xanax, Vicodin, and Viagra, making them more vulnerable to his abuse than they already were as young children. Even, was it Aaron Carter? Aaron Carter was the one he was a serious addict when he died. He was the one that came out and said that he smoked weed with Michael Jackson when he was like 13 or something. And that, that wasn't very cool. But obviously at the time he wasn't bothered. And then the next day he had to retract it and say, oh no, I didn't really say that. And then from then onwards, he always came out and said Michael Jackson was innocent. Just saying. It's not that hard to work this out. His advisors and employees made sure the substances were always available to him, including when he was alone with children. It's disgusting. It is disgusting. Jackson used child-friendly language to appeal to plaintiffs and conceal the assault and drug and alcohol use from others. Can I have a meeting? Yogi tea, Neverland, and go to Disneyland were his code words for encouraging the children to engage in extreme acts with him. Those acts were as bad as, if not worse, than anything that can be described or imagined. He called wine Jesus juice and hard liquor Disney juice. He associated alcohol with playing, including by encouraging plaintiffs to drink with him while they were in the basement of his Neverland Ranch game room, which he called the wine cellar. I think in the footage of the FBI doing the raid, or the sheriff's, it wasn't the FBI, sorry, it was the sheriff's office doing the raid at Neverland, I think they're asking about that. And his staff at Neverland testified during the trial that they saw him giving wine to kids. That bit just never gets publicized, but it's in the transcripts. Jackson also made plaintiffs fear and distrust others so they would hide the abuse. He repeatedly stressed that all of their lives and plaintiffs' family members' lives would be destroyed if his activity with them was discovered. He told them to hide if someone entered the room during a molestation. He drilled them on what to say if a police officer or other adult asked whether he was molesting them. He told them to stay away from therapists and to avoid women, who he told them were evil, sneaky liars, and could smell if something sexual had happened. You know, he tried to poison his kids against the nanny, that Grace woman. To prevent disclosure of the abuse and gain more access to them, Jackson twice convinced plaintiffs' parents to withdraw Aldo and marry Nicole from school so that they could be homeschooled. The second time was immediately after authorities raided Neverland Ranch in 2003. Jackson's manipulation and psychological and emotional abuse continued until days before Jackson's death. I have a video of his daughter. I don't know if I should play it now. But this is his daughter, Paris. Just before we carry on. It's only 3 minutes, but let me turn up the volume. I think the volume was a bit quiet last time I did this, but oops. I don't want to do that. Oops, what have I done?
And then I'll like kind of just like leave it alone.
One sec. Oh, I don't want to ask Siri. Thank you. Right, what I was trying to do was turn up the volume. There we go. Okay, we've got the volume on. Let me go back. Right. Okay, let's watch this quickly.
Okay, I'm gonna say this and then I'll like kind of just like leave it alone. Because it seems like there's been a lot of responses. There's been a lot of responses to the thing that I posted earlier about just like clarifying like that I wasn't involved at all. Aside from like giving feedback on the first draft and then getting the feedback that yeah, we're not actually going to address your notes at all.
She's talking about the biopic, and she's saying like they sent her obviously an outline of how it was written, and she was just like, yeah, I'm not really feeling this.
And I was like, all right, like fuck me, you know. So I just like butt it out, and I just like I've left it alone because it's not my project. So you know they're gonna make whatever they're gonna make. A big reason why I haven't said anything up until this point is because I know a lot of you guys are gonna be happy with it. Like a big section. The film panders to a very specific section of my dad's fandom that still lives in the fantasy, and they're gonna be happy with it. Just like I remember hearing about how Freddie Mercury's family responded to seeing the Bohemian Rhapsody film, right? And I remember like reading the Dirt autobiography as a kid, and then growing up and like watching the movie they ended up making starring like MGK, and I was like, okay. The thing about these biopics is it's Hollywood, so this is it's fantasy land. It's not real, but it's sold to you as real, and a lot of sugar-coated, like the narrative is being controlled, and there's a lot of inaccuracy, and there's a lot of just full-blown lies. And at the end of the day, like that doesn't really fly with me. I don't really like dishonesty. I spoke up. I wasn't heard. I fucked off. That's it. Y'all are gonna like the fucking movie, so just go watch it, go enjoy it, do whatever, leave me out of it. Also, something that like quite a lot of people are saying is like she hates her dad. She resents him. She wants nothing to do with him. Because I'm not like calling the shots on set, being a big shot producer of a movie that's filled with just inaccuracies. That's not my truth. That's not where I'm coming from. I just prefer honesty over like sales and monetary gain. Like that's it. And I kind of just don't want anything to do with that. So I'm gonna fuck off again. And I'm gonna keep minding my own business. I suggest you do the same. God bless and Godspeed.
There's it. Okay, so that's what his daughter says about the. I mean, it's just interesting how she says the fandom likes to live in a fantasy, and how Hollywood is going to make a Hollywood version of his life. So, just for some context, let's go back to what's being alleged. Jackson's enablers. Jackson's employees, advisors, lawyers, and doctors were aware of Jackson's abuse and aided and abetted it, both by facilitating it and concealing it. For decades, Branca, McLean, and other Jackson advisors, representatives, and employees acting for the estate and its entities, along with lawyers, doctors, managers, security personnel, house managers, publicists, maids, chauffeurs, and pilots working for Jackson and his entities, all of the foregoing collectively the Jackson organization knew of and facilitated Jackson's SA of children. A number of Jackson's victims have now been identified publicly, and there are others who have not been identified publicly. And I mean, is it any surprise? Because anyone that has spoken out has been harassed, bullied, trolled, shamed the mother of Gavin Arvizo. I mean, the way she was treated by Harvey Levin, that's another whole story. Like, she was made to seem like the criminal, not Michael Jackson in that case. So publicly, anyone that has been through that is going to be thinking to themselves, there's no way I'm going to speak out because I don't think it's going to get me anywhere. Look how long this has been going on. The Jackson organization arranged for interstate and international trips during which Jackson S.A. plaintiffs, members of the Jackson organization, purposely booked plaintiffs' hotel rooms near Jackson's rooms so that he had immediate access to plaintiffs. When a Cascio parent accompanied one of the children on a trip with Jackson, members of the Jackson organization intentionally booked the parent a room far from Jackson and the child so that the parent would not see them spending long periods alone in Jackson's rooms. There's an interview of, I think it's Aldo, saying that's the first time it happened. He was in a hotel room playing on his computer game and he just pulled his trousers down. And we call them trousers in the UK. In America, you call them pants. He just pulled his pants down and he was like a little kid. So he didn't really say anything because he was like, well, I guess this is just what happens. But there was also a clip that I found where he's in his suite and some guy comes in, I'm guessing it's his assistant, and he's like, I need Brett's mum's number, you know? The Jackson organization procured expensive gifts and arranged shopping trips that Jackson orchestrated as part of his grooming of plaintiffs. Jackson organization members providing those services knew that Jackson was SAing plaintiffs and many other children. Jackson organization members constantly encountered evidence of Jackson's SA with plaintiffs. They saw Jackson bringing victims, including plaintiffs, to spend nights in his private bedrooms. They did the children's bedding and laundry. They brought pornography and photographs of unclothed children to Jackson. This was happening with Diddy, with the freak-offs. He was sending his assistants to set up the freak-off rooms and clean it up so he didn't get billed by the hotel. And yet he was still not charged with RICO or sex trafficking. It's just unbelievable, but it happened. He was found innocent of those charges. They procured drugs and alcohol that they knew he was going to give to plaintiffs to make them comply with his demands. They saw plaintiffs and other children inebriated and in alcohol-induced stupors. Gavin Arvizo said, this guy was recovering from cancer treatment and he's poured wine into a Coke can and he's gone, I don't really like it. And he's like, just drink it. They regularly witnessed Jackson's inappropriate displays of affection to plaintiffs, including Jackson fondling his victims in public spaces at Neverland Ranch and elsewhere. They followed Jackson's orders not to disturb him when he was alone with plaintiffs, knowing that he was violating them. They installed security systems at Neverland designed to prevent outsiders from discovering Jackson's crimes. Leaving Neverland. In 2019, HBO released the documentary Leaving Neverland, in which Jackson victims Wade Robson and James Safechuck described Jackson's essay of them when they were children. Leaving Neverland deprogrammed plaintiffs and forced them for the first time to become conscious of the reality. Jackson's abuse was wrong and had severely damaged them. It was not love, it was not normal, and it was not exclusive, as Jackson had spent years making them believe. The 2019 acquisition and consulting agreement, this is really important. In 2019, plaintiffs were introduced to Weisberg. Weisberg told them he was a private investigator and former New York Police Department officer. He promised to help plaintiff's family obtain fair compensation. I forgot, I've got my highlighter thing. From the Jackson estate. Weisberg convinced the family, including plaintiffs, that he would be working for them, not for Jackson's estate. Among other things, Weisberg said the Jackson estate was the evil empire, that he would never work for the estate or its representatives, and that he was happy to be on the right side because he usually worked for the bad guys. Shortly after the Weisberg introduction, prominent Jackson estate BRYAN FREEDMAN, let me just go back to my chart for one sec. For the not regular viewers, that is BRYAN FREEDMAN. Yeah, by the way, BRYAN FREEDMAN, when he was studying law at college, was accused of being involved in a gang of a underage girl, and he paid a settlement to her. Right. Shortly after the Weisberg introduction, prominent Jackson estate attorney BRYAN FREEDMAN told the family, including plaintiffs, that the estate would compensate them for Jackson's crimes. Plaintiffs, understanding, based on what Weisberg told them and on what he failed to disclose, was that Weisberg had contacted Freedman on their behalf. Although plaintiffs understood that Freedman represented the Jackson estate, Freedman convinced plaintiffs that he was working in their interests. He expressed sympathy for them and acknowledged Jackson's crimes. He told the Cascio family that he represented the situation to obscure his real role. Freedman and Weisberg were even more dishonest about Weisberg's role. Unknown to plaintiffs, Weisberg's job was to neutralize the threat that leaving Neverland would trigger public disclosures from other Jackson victims, including plaintiffs. Just let that sink in for a minute. Freedman had a history of paying Weisberg for services and hired Weisberg on behalf of the Jackson estate to convince plaintiffs to cooperate with the estate. Freedman and Weisberg concealed from plaintiffs that Weisberg was working for Freedman and, through Freedman, the Jackson estate. This guy is an ex-cop. Freedman and Weisberg concealed from plaintiffs that their goal was to buy plaintiffs' silence for as little as possible. That part. We know that BRYAN FREEDMAN has a history of getting low settlements for his clients. In the case of, I don't think I mentioned it, but before he represented Justin Baldoni, he represented a disabled guy, a guy who's actually no longer alive. He had a terminal illness called cystic fibrosis, and Justin Baldoni used him on a TV show about people with terminal illnesses, and he had written a script about his about having his terminal illness for a movie he wanted to make. He showed it to Justin Baldoni. Next thing, Justin Baldoni's producing a film with exactly the same storyline. So Freedman sued Baldoni on behalf of Flores. Travis Flores was his name. And Baldoni paid him a settlement. Now Travis is dead because he had a terminal illness. And BRYAN FREEDMAN is representing Justin Baldoni. Travis Flores's family have come out and said that they're going to sue BRYAN FREEDMAN because he basically ripped them off and coerced them into getting this settlement deal, which wasn't in their best interests or the interests of Travis. It's just uncanny that it's the same thing happening here. Freedman and Weisberg failed to advise plaintiffs that they needed or should retain their own counsel to help them negotiate compensation, and affirmatively dissuaded them from consulting independent counsel. So that bit is, again, very important. Freedman and Weisberg failed to advise plaintiffs that they needed or should retain their own counsel to help them negotiate compensation, and affirmatively dissuaded them from consulting independent counsel. This is in 2019, yeah? Leaving Neverland has just come out. They're probably just like in a state of shock, realizing all this stuff has been going on to other people, because each one of them, I know people are like, well, it's very hard to believe that they lied and then they suddenly realize now that there's money involved. Look, on this case, to speak from the victim's point of view, he told each one of them that this was only happening with them, and that if they were to ever say anything, their whole family would be destroyed. How were they to know that he had said that to every single other person? Until they watched that documentary and realized that he'd done exactly the same thing to Wade and James. And that Freedman and Weisberg had been hired specifically because they knew that was going to likely happen. And the thing about like just being dissuaded from consulting independent counsel, this is what happens with record deals every single time. Is sign record deals or contracts for TV shows or reality shows or whatever it is. They're rushed into it like, yeah, you got to sign it now. We're going to make you famous. It's all going to be wonderful. You're going to make loads of money. Don't worry. The victims of Epstein have even said it. After their early conversations, Weisberg arranged for plaintiffs and other members of the Cascio family to meet with Freedman and the late Howard Weitzman, another Jackson estate attorney. In or about June 2019, plaintiffs told Freedman and Weitzman explicit details about Jackson's abuse. Freedman interviewed each Cascio sibling individually again, without advising them that they should have their own counsel. Freedman and Weitzman told plaintiffs they knew they were telling the truth. Weitzman told the family he wanted to help them. Weitzman also said there were others, a girl. Freedman and Weitzman promised to send the family a settlement agreement that would properly compensate them for their pain and suffering. So he's saying, like I just said, the Epstein estate has no problem paying out the victims of Epstein, even though there wasn't a trial. The guy said in his deposition testimony, Darren Indyke, his longtime lawyer, said, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for them to claim. And they're thinking that they're going to help them, that they're disgusted that they're victims of Michael Jackson. But they're lying to them because they're crafty, manipulative liars. Throughout this process, Weitzman, like Freedman and Weisberg, convinced plaintiffs he was on their side. He repeatedly told the Cascio family that he was advocating on their behalf to Branca so that the estate would pay a fair settlement. Weitzman established a personal relationship with plaintiffs to make them trust him, including by visiting the siblings' parents. At no time did Weitzman tell plaintiffs they needed their own lawyer or that their conversations with him were not privileged and would be relayed to the estate, including its decision-maker, Branca, with or without their consent. When plaintiffs asked if they should hire their own counsel, Weitzman told them it would complicate matters and could prevent them from reaching an agreement with the Jackson estate. The Jackson estate eventually offered plaintiffs only $100,000 each for the many years of abuse Jackson inflicted on them. Weitzman told plaintiffs that amount was inadequate to compensate plaintiffs for the harm they had suffered and promised to try to negotiate a higher amount, still without making it clear that he was working to protect the Jackson's estate's interests, not theirs. Weitzman told plaintiffs that the next sum that the estate would propose would be fair and the best he could achieve from Branca. Weitzman also advised plaintiffs that they risked losing any reasonable settlement if they rejected whatever the estate offered next. On or about December 22nd, 2019, Weisberg told plaintiffs that he was traveling to New Jersey to talk with them. Weisberg then met with plaintiffs, their spouses, and their parents at the Casio family restaurant in New Jersey. Weitzman, who was on the phone with Weisberg, told Weisberg what to say. Weisberg told the family that the estate believed them and was prepared to compensate them fairly for the suffering Jackson had caused. Weisberg then showed plaintiffs a legal document deceptively titled Acquisition and Consulting Agreement, the document. That was the first time they saw the document. On information and belief, defendants used that harmless-sounding title to obscure the unfair and unconscionable nature of the document so that plaintiffs would accept and sign the document without protest. Weisberg did not let plaintiffs read the document and did not give them a copy. Instead, he allowed a family member, not one of the plaintiffs, to read the convoluted legalese out aloud. The estate and its lawyers knew not only that the statements in the document that plaintiffs had an opportunity to consult with counsel and that the document was jointly drafted were false, but also that the estate and its lawyers had themselves prevented plaintiffs from consulting with counsel and negotiating the terms of the document, and that the estate presented it to plaintiffs on a take-it-or-leave-it basis. Weisberg told the family vaguely that the document was a life rights agreement that would give the Jackson estate the exclusive rights to plaintiff experiences with Jackson. In fact, buried within the document's legalese was a purported release of the estate from liability for Jackson's crimes and language that prohibited plaintiffs from reporting Jackson's crimes to law enforcement or anyone else, saying anything negative about Jackson, or holding the estate accountable in court for its and Jackson's wrongdoing. The document provided for the estate to pay each plaintiff the wholly inadequate sum of 5 annual payments of approximately $690,000 as compensation for the many years that Jackson abused each of them, and that the Jackson organization enabled and covered up the abuse. The document also provided for Weisberg and his agent to receive a commission of 6% of the payments to plaintiffs, thereby reducing payments to plaintiffs by 6%. This is another thing that they never say in articles. You just read so-and-so got paid X amount of millions, but out of that, they're probably putting in all the legal fees and all the other costs, the travel costs, the experts cost a fortune these days. You know, a headline saying millions of dollars payout gets everyone's attention, but what they don't do is they don't give you the breakdown of how much the victim is actually left with at the end of the day. In August 1994, more than 30 years ago, Jackson reportedly paid one of his victims, who, unlike plaintiffs, was represented by counsel, $25 million. That's a crazy amount to pay someone if you didn't do anything. The equivalent of approximately $55 million in 2024. To settle that victim's claims that Jackson had abused him for a reported 3-month period, taking into account inflation and that Jackson's abuse of plaintiffs continued for many years. Jackson paid his 1993 victim approximately 100 times the amount the document allocates for each plaintiff. Before signing the document, plaintiffs were never given an opportunity to read it carefully or obtain independent legal advice about what it meant and whether it was in their interest to sign it. After signing the document, plaintiffs were never given a copy of what they had signed. The document's technical wording included other unconscionable terms which were not explained to plaintiffs and which plaintiffs did not understand. If the Jackson's estate view is accepted, it included a grossly unfair penalty designed to pit the members of the Casio family, including plaintiffs, against each other. The Jackson estate interprets the document to provide that if any one of the plaintiffs or another member of their family disclosed Jackson's crimes to anyone, all of the promised payments would stop, and each plaintiff would have to pay back all payments that the estate had already made. The document contained an arbitration agreement that purportedly denied plaintiffs the right to make claims against the estate in court and have them decided by a jury of their peers. Weitzman, Weisberg, and Freedman never explained that to plaintiffs. By the way, another thing about Freedman, to anyone who doesn't know, who doesn't watch my other content, he's just been sanctioned by a judge in the Baldoni case. That doesn't make headlines either. Never explained to plaintiffs, and even if the estate had allowed them to read it, the written document contained nothing to point a reader's attention to it. Had plaintiffs understood the full meaning of the document, they would not have signed it. The Jackson estate arranged for plaintiffs to sign the document immediately, including arranging for their signatures to be notarized by a notary public who Weisberg brought to the restaurant. Plaintiffs were not provided with a copy of the document. Wow. Plaintiffs are informed and believe that neither Branca nor anyone else on behalf of the estate signed the document until plaintiffs raised issue with the document, with the estate in or around 2024. Unlike plaintiff's signatures, Branca's purported signature is not notarized or even dated. Plaintiffs are informed and believe that Branca delayed signing the document to leave the estate the option to avoid it. Plaintiffs are further informed and believe he did not sign it until years after plaintiffs signed it, when the Jackson estate learned that plaintiffs were considering making claims against the Jackson estate. I want to know as well is why people in the comments never have any anger towards the lawyers. I never see that. The Jackson's estate's publication of material it claims is because they say, oh, they're liars, they're greedy. Yeah, that's what John Branca is. He's a greedy liar. The Jackson estate's publication of material it claims is subject to the confidentiality and non-disparagement terms in the document. Around April 2024, Weisberg contacted the Cascio family again. He indicated that Branca was willing to increase the estate's compensation and make further arrangements to ensure plaintiffs' continued silence. Freedman also contacted plaintiffs, told them that they needed a lawyer, and tried to induce them to hire him as their lawyer to negotiate with his client, the estate. By then, the conflict was obvious. That's wild. Freedman also contacted plaintiffs, told them that they needed a lawyer, and tried to induce them to hire him as their lawyer to negotiate with his client, the estate. And you know what? Now it makes you think about some of his other clients that have lost FKA twigs. There was some girl that was in a reality show. Anyway. Plaintiffs retained independent counsel and learned for the first time that Weisberg worked for the estate and that Weitzman also represented the Jackson estate against them when he pretended to advance their interests and negotiate the amounts that the estate agreed to pay plaintiffs in the document. When plaintiffs demanded compensation proportioned to Jackson's crimes and the harm they caused, Branca and McCain instructed Weisberg to try to convince plaintiffs to fire their independent counsel. Plaintiffs refused. Branca and the Jackson estate then engaged in a public blame the victim campaign to intimidate plaintiffs and their counsel. That's where, going back to my people web, that's where he comes in. Good old Michael Sitrick. And these people, Candace Owens, Perez Hilton, Andy Signal. Armed and ready at the end of an email to make a video blaming the victim. To intimidate plaintiffs and their counsel, in September 2024, Branca and the estate published false and defamatory statements concerning plaintiffs, their brother and their attorney, and false statements concerning the document to reporters. Branca and the Jackson estate made the false statements with the intent and knowledge that they would be published for maximum circulation to the public, and they were published, including in the Financial Times, the Washington Informer, and YouTube.com. The false and defamatory statements included that plaintiffs and their counsel were shaking down, i.e., blackmailing the Jackson estate, by threatening to release false claims that Jackson molested plaintiffs without naming them. Branca intentionally described plaintiffs with enough detail that any reader could immediately discern their identity with a quick Google search. Branca's statements materially breached the confidentiality and non-disparagement terms in the document by disclosing the existence of the document and disparaging plaintiffs. I think actually there was another journalist, a black guy, that was one of the first people to write about this. I forgot his name, but he has been on the payroll for a long time. When I say on the payroll, like, people make a lot of money out of lying on behalf of Michael Jackson. Think about it. Who makes money out of being honest about him? On July 9th, 2025, Branca, McLean, the estate, and MJC filed a petition to compel arbitration in the Superior Court for the County of Los Angeles. The petition repeated much of what Branca had published in the press, extensively quoted the document, and made detailed allegations about the circumstances surrounding its creation. The petition accused plaintiffs of extortion and lying about Jackson's abuse, and contained many other defamatory statements. Although the petition did not identify plaintiffs by name, the petition provided ample information from which plaintiffs' names could be deduced easily. The petition was in direct violation of the terms of the document, which expressly prohibited defendants from defaming plaintiffs and from making any court filings relating to the document. What I was actually going to do was that layout. So you can, MJC, Branca, McLean, and the estate filed the petition to intimidate and defame plaintiffs and position themselves to claim that the litigation privilege immunized them from liability for their evasion of the document's confidentiality, disparagement, and mandatory arbitration provisions, and for defaming plaintiffs. Why do some people think it's wrong to want monetary compensation for being victimized? Then wanting money doesn't discount what happened. I mean, yeah, that's what a reasonable person would think like that. But as I'm trying to explain, with these campaigns, with these smear campaigns, with these millions of dollars that are paid to people like Michael Sitrick on a yearly retainer, people come to believe that. And they don't look at the real people making money out of it, which is his family. His family benefit from the estate and how it profits, and the lawyers. And that his daughter, Paris Jackson, she's now holding the lawyers accountable. She's saying, you're not being transparent with your accounting, you're doing all these shady operations, and I want to see it accounted for, literally. And now they're fighting her and trying to smear her. to think, yeah, I mean, exactly. You can receive, like I said, the Epstein estate doesn't have a problem paying out the victims. No one's saying that they're just after money, other than Vincent Armand's wife, which is what Virginia Roberts said, you know. Okay, let's go back. So this is the claims for relief. It's kind of just laying it all out. I mean, basically explaining what the issues were, which we've kind of gone over. Defendants covered up Dominic, Marie, Nicole, and Aldo's childhood sex abuse. They are entitled to recover up to treble damages under California Code of Civil Procedure section. I mean, the idea as well is that these monetary claims are supposed to somehow protect future crimes from happening, or protect victims from future crimes happening. They're supposed to be a deterrent. This is just ridiculous. When you see how this game works, like, it's like you make more money out of defending someone that's guilty than you do out of someone that's innocent. It's $1 billion industry, this shit. Defendants acted with fraud, malice, or oppression in connection with the foregoing conduct, such that Dominic, Marie, Nicole, and Aldo are entitled to an award of punitive damages in an amount sufficient to punish defendants for their wrongful conduct and to deter future malfeasance. Then they're disputing the document, saying that it was not an enforceable contract. Well, we've just seen what happens in a different case when that's proved to be correct. If the document was an enforceable agreement, Branca's September 24 statements and MJC's filing of the petition materially and substantially breached its express prohibitions against disparaging plaintiffs, disclosing the information that Branca published in September 2024 and including confidential information in court documents. So it's alleging that they have acted illegally. Defendants' acts in contravention of the express terms of the document have caused plaintiffs to suffer damages in an amount to be proved at trial, plus interest at the legal rate. Sixth claim for relief: fraud. Thank you. These are the fraudsters. To convince plaintiffs to enter into the document, Freedman, Weitzman, and Weisberg, acting on behalf and at the discretion of the Jackson estate, including Branca, falsely and fraudulently represented to plaintiffs that they were protecting plaintiffs' interests and negotiating the document on their behalf. Freedman and Weisberg intentionally and fraudulently concealed from plaintiffs that Weisberg was working for the Jackson estate and that Freedman and Weisberg were adverse to plaintiffs. Crazy work. Plaintiffs reasonably relied on Freedman, Weitzman, and Weisberg's fraudulent misrepresentation on behalf and at the instruction of the Jackson estate. Plaintiffs were not attorneys, and the Jackson estate, Freedman, Weitzman, and Weisberg knew that plaintiffs were unsophisticated, did not understand legal documents, especially when they were not allowed to read them, and did not have counsel. Due to defendants' fraudulent representation and concealments, plaintiffs were denied the opportunity to negotiate full and fair compensation for their injuries alleged herein, and have been damaged in an amount to be proved at trial plus interest. Defendants acted with fraud, malice, or oppression in connection with the foregoing conduct, such that plaintiffs are entitled to an award of punitive damages in an amount sufficient to punish defendants for their wrongful conduct and to deter future malfeasance. Seventh claim, breach of fiduciary duty. Weisberg breached his fiduciary duty by concealing from plaintiffs that he was employed by Freedman and through Freedman by the Jackson estate to represent the estate's interests against plaintiffs and to convince plaintiffs to accept far less than the reasonable value of their claims for Jackson's abuse and the Jackson organization's facilitation and concealment of the abuse, and by encouraging and convincing plaintiffs to sign the document which contained the unconscionable terms described herein. As a result of Weisberg's breach of fiduciary duty, plaintiffs have suffered damages in an amount to be proved at trial plus interest at the legal rate. Weisberg acted with fraud, malice, or oppression in connection with the foregoing conduct. Eighth claim for relief, rescission. Plaintiffs incorporate the foregoing allegations as though fully set forth. The document in its entirety and the arbitration agreement therein are procedurally and substantively unconscionable. MJC procured plaintiffs' signatures on the document by fraud, undue influence, and duress. I think that's going to be a tough one to prove, but then we've got ninth claim for declaratory judgment. That's pretty much it. And a demand for jury trial. Signed by Howard E. King, who I have to say is a disgusting attorney himself. He defends Marilyn Manson, but it is what it is. All these lawyers are just in it for the money. They have no ethics, they have no integrity, they don't really care about the victims. IMO. All right, so I'm just going to end the video by going back to Paris Jackson, because there was one last little bit that she had to say. Let me play it. Oh.
Also, and I will say, for some of you guys that are not like insanely familiar with the dynamic between me and like my dad's fandom, and like why would you be? So I guess like when the actor that's in the movie did that article with Rolling Stone, and he was like, Paris is so helpful and like supportive of this movie, blah 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 blah, and she's been helping out on set. My response to that was like, yo, I've met this man twice. Once at a birthday party and once at the Amphar thing the other night. Both were like hella brief interactions. Like, I've met this man twice. Because I said this man.
Paris is a little weird. I think she said her family is trying to push the idea she's committable or something. I know she's had addiction issues. I mean, look, she's had an effed up life, you know. Like, again, because I've done the research, the beginning of her life, they were pretty much homeless. Although they were living in these lavish places, they were going from, like, they were basically sofa surfing. I mean, it was like luxury sofa surfing. They were just flying all over the world, staying in these random people's houses. Must have been so weird for her. And I mean, according to this, like, their dad was still abusing kids right up until he died. So yeah, and then as for the rest of the family as well, I mean, let's not even get started on that. But I think she's a really pretty girl. I've not really listened to her songs either. Like, the thing is, with all of these people that I talk about in these videos, I don't have any sort of like special vested interest in them. I'm just aware of who they are. As long as they're not too toxic, then I'll play stuff like this. Do you know what I mean? I think it helps.
She's so rude. I can't believe the attitude from her. How could she say this man?
All right. So I think that's it. It was a quick one tonight. Have I been through everything? Well, hopefully that made sense to anyone that is still questioning what is going on with this family. Please go and watch any of my other videos about BRYAN FREEDMAN, and bear in mind that he hires people to do surveillance, internet surveillance, and places articles online and uses websites and uses social media to discredit victims on behalf of his client, which in this case is the Michael Jackson estate. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there for tonight. I hope this has been interesting, and I will see you in my next video, in my next live. Take care. Bye.